Let's meet Joseph Conrad today, one of the first writer of the Age of Anxiety. He was born Joseph Theodore Conrad Korneziowski in in a Russian area occupying Poland in 1857. His family was forced into exile in Russia due to his father's insurrectionary activity. And and so as you can see, his languages, his mother tongue was Polish, but then he also spoke Russian. And after his parents' death, he was brought up by an uncle in France, in Marseille, after he left for Marseille, but um, he also spoke French. He was attracted to the sea, and so he worked on a ship. He became a British citizen in 1886, learned English to acquire his Master Mariner qualification. He traveled to the Congo in 1890, where he experienced the brutalities of colonial exploitation, the French exploitations. A modest inheritance allowed him to abandon the sea and devote himself to writing. He died suddenly from a heart attack in 1924. He wrote a lot. The Nigger of the Narcissus, Lord of Jim, which you probably read at Scuola Media, Heart of Darkness, Nostromo, The Secret Agent, Secret Sharer, The Shadow Line, but we are going to focus on Heart of Darkness, written in 1902, at the very beginning of the 20th century. Conrad was one of the first different writers from the previous century. In the preface to the Nigger of the Narcissus, he stated that the writer should not amuse the readers. Sorry. But and should not teach a lesson, but he should record the complex pattern of life as he saw it. So his narrative technique is difficult because understanding man, his inner soul, his problems, his thought is extremely complex. So the narrative technique reflects the complex thought of man. His main setting is the sea, exotic latitude, the ship, an African river, and the jungle. All these places, all these topics, these points, enable him to isolate his characters so that their problems and inner conflicts stood out with particular force. So Conrad found chronological sequence inadequate. He broke the normal time sequence. He used time shift. How? Well, using different narrators, so different points of view. All this to create the illusion of life being lived by a number of very different people at the same time. He used the first person narration, and especially in Heart of Darkness, but you don't know, you can't understand really who the narrator is. So it's a sort of invisible narrators, and he also wrote journals and letters. Many novels and short stories are told by the same narrator, Marlowe, or have more than one narrator. He used several points of view to break free from the constraint of an omniscient narrator because he wanted the reader to be free to decide for himself. And this is the main thought, the main fashion, we can say, of the 20th century, the relativism of moral values. There is no absolute truth. The language is extremely difficult, also because you have to always remember that he's got three languages in his mind, but he chose English for his novels because he thought that English was the best language to express different feelings, different features, different description. The fluid form of his novels reflects the complexity of man's consciousness. The dialogue is idiomatic, characterized by questions, exclamation marks, dashes, introductions, like our thoughts. We think in with interruption. We don't think in a smooth and a fluid way. And so, to express all this, Conrad used a great variety of adjectives and an extremely complex syntax. The main themes are the individual consciousness, a man who has the qualities of honesty, courage, fidelity, and is confronted with evil, like Kurtz in Heart of Darkness. The conflict between personal feelings and professional duties. It is organized society that gives man confidence and individual responsibility and self-control. What is Heart of Darkness about? What is heart? What is dark? Well, it is the heart of man. The title I am thinking of is The Heart of Darkness, but the narrative is not gloomy. The criminality of inefficiency and poor selfishness when tackling the civilized work in Africa is a justifiable idea. The subject is of our time distinctly, though not topically treated. This means in general. The historical context of the novel, well, of course, this is about the French colonization, the Belgian colonization in Congo. So Conrad witnessed the specific form of colonial imperialism King Leopold II of Belgium practiced in his Congo Free State. So his agents had to bring civilization, remember the white man's burden, accustom the natives to general laws, institute a labor tax of 40 hours per month. The plot the novel is set at the end of the 19th century at an unspecified date. The story is told by a sailor called Marlowe who works for a Belgian company involved in the ivory trade in the Congo. Marlowe and the passengers of the Nelly, a ship, are waiting for the tide which will let the ship sail from London. Okay, because London is in the inner land on the Thames. So the ship needed a tide this period, not now, of course. Marlowe's task is to carry raw ivory from the heart of the African continent to the coast where it can be loaded on ship bound for Europe. In Africa, he gets to the company station where he is disappointed by the inefficiency and by the cruelty of the colonial exploitation. There, he hears Kurt's name for the first time. Kurt has become a mysterious figure. He was a company agent who has become a sort of idol for the natives. He's seriously ill now and Marlowe has got the duty to rescue him. He finally meets Carter and succeeds in taking him on board of the ship. But Carter dies during the journey, and nobody can understand why, and nobody can understand what he did inside the jungle. When Marlowe returns to Belgium, he calls on Carter's fiancée and tells her that Carter said her name while dying, but of course it's not true. The main characters in Heart of Darkness are Marlowe and Carter. Marlowe is a sailor who enjoys exploring the uncharted areas of the world. He has not been yet, he has not yet been subjected to the chaos of the African Congo. is able to view things in a rational light, he comes to realize that the natives probably have more sense than the white Europeans who have come to civilize them. So, the first doubt of this white man's burden and superiority. And like Kurt, he's the only person in the novel to be addressed by his name. Kurt is the mysterious person. He has become a mysterious person. He's the chief of the inner station, almost legendary due to his genius and his stationary superior ivory production, has a passion for the wilderness, and years in the jungle have made him savage and fanatical, probably because he took drugs, probably you can't understand. He is worshipped like a godlike being by the natives, but he is in poor health by the time Marlowe encounters the indictment of imperialism. So, in the novel, imperialism is a system of political and economic dominance. And Conrad condemned the brutal exercise of law on the natives, the missionary zeal, the administrative efficiency, and search for profit. So, yes, everything is condemned and blamed. What is darkness? Death and despair in the jungle, solitude and alienation, which drive man mad, the death of ethical behavior, the death of goodness and civility, the death of our authority as selves. This is very, very up to date, is it? It is a journey into the self. It is a journey into Africa, remember that this, and a journey into the self, both. So Marlowe is a mythical journey in search of the self to bring back the new truth. And Carter went into the jungle without knowing himself. His wrong conduct took him beyond the limits of his heart, and so the result was madness and then death. Marlowe did not transgress his limits. He came back without fully understanding his experience. So he just saw the exploitations of the white. The heart of darkness tried to exercise its influence on him. He was able to restrain himself, so he was still aware. Marlowe was saved because his aim was self-knowledge, the mystery of existence which demands great humility. The novel ends with this suggestion. It is impossible to penetrate the surface of reality in any meaningful way. The structure and style of the novel, well, as I told you already, the narrative is difficult because understanding man is difficult. So it is it is built like a series of stories, one embedded with the other. External frame with an anonymous narrator who introduces the story and formally closes it. Marlowe is the observer narrator, so a narrator who narrates what Marlowe sees. Shift backwards and forwards in Marlowe's narrative, and so you feel suspense and you are moved to go on reading. And the language is characterized by idiomatic speech and irony, and this is called psychological realism. And then, of course, it's a theme of black and white symbolism. So white is traditionally associated with light, calm, peace, beauty, and good, but no, it is uh, linked to violence, exploitation, and indifference of colonialism. Darkness, as usually seen as a menace to light as evil, now the black people acquires a positive connotation. It is the color of the jungle and primitive people.